When the flames of chaos rise like a raid on your village, will you stand ready or fall in ashes? Today, we'll arm you with 20 battle-tested prepper strategies to shield your home and family from disasters like the recent Los Angeles fires. Let's prepare for the storm like true Vikings, where only the ready survive. Stay with us, warriors.
Through the white thunderstorms, we ride on the back of our cars in a fearless stride. Sons of Thor, hearts made of fire, conquering lands, fueling our desires. Roaring engines and lightning in our rise, united we stand. Our strength won't compromise. From the east to the west, we stand on every road. Beneath open skies, a promised land where our spirits arise. We battle the storms, the tides of the sea. Now we've arrived in the land we're meant to be.
Welcome to the DragonShip. I am your host today, Paul Bauer, and the DragonShip is the only panel show on the internet where we firmly believe that a rising tide lifts all ships. Joining me on the panel today, hey, look, Huds showed up. What's up, brother?
Hey,
I was like,
what's going on?
I was like, it's gonna be a short show today, man. There's only three of us, but good thing you showed up. So, what's going on, man? Anything new with you?
Not much. Got some travel coming up this week, so just trying to get everything organized for that. But yeah, outside of that, I'm going to be moving soon. So the tedious process of breaking down my Legos, it hurts my soul, but it has to happen. So I've been breaking down a lot of different sets and just organizing that.
That sounds terrible. Tarl, what's new with you, man?
Not much, man. Same shit, different day, but, stick to the plan, as they say.
All right. Wraith, how are you doing?
Doing good, man. Just working on a book, trying to get it out this month. And, I've just finished up my second presentation in the John's men's group. And I'm starting to pick up a couple people for coaching again. So it's a good month.
That's great. That's outstanding. If you guys didn't know, my dog passed away on Monday. So it was a rough week for me, but we're getting through it. After the show, I got her ashes back yesterday. We're going to head over to my parents' house and we're going to spread her ashes there because my parents' property was her favorite place on earth. She would go there and hunt voles and stuff like that. So I'm going to scatter her ashes down by the creek bed where she used to like to dig around for voles and stuff like that. I think that'll be a good place for her. But what we're talking about today, actually Huds came up with this idea. He wanted to do a topic about the LA fires, and I was like, well, why don't we talk about it from a prepper perspective? Because man, a lot of people just aren't prepared for disasters, and we saw that during COVID. When like the toilet paper ran out and like everyone like lost their mind, right? And the thing is that when the TV show Doomsday Preppers was out, right? Love that show. There was a lot of idiots on that show, but there was some really good, well-prepared people. And I love that show because it really gave a lot of really good ideas on what to do in various situations. But a lot of people seem to think that people who have a prepper mindset are conspiracy theorists, you're just living your life in fear. And it's like, well, actually, if you are well prepared for any kind of emergency, you don't have to live your life in fear because you're prepared for it. You know what I mean? So right. I thought it'd be good to talk about that. I have a list of 20 things we can do to pretty much be prepared for any kind of emergency during COVID, right? And if you guys recall, I don't know how it was in your guys' area, but for me, in my area, we didn't know what was going on. Like, there was very little information. Everyone's like, we don't know what's going on. We think it's basically the bubonic plague and everyone's dying. And so they shut down everything. And they were like, if you're even out in the streets, like the Gestapo is going to come and like lock you up and stuff. And so I just remember my dad calling me when they announced that they were going to lock down everything and shut down businesses and stuff. And he goes, son, I hope you're prepared. Like, I hope you have enough like guns and ammo. I hope you have enough food on hand. And I go, Dad, finally. Like, I've been preparing for this. I've been preparing for this day for the last 20 years. Like, I'm ready for this. And then it ended up being one big nothing burger. But still, like, one of the biggest reasons why I got into prepping was because when I lived in San Diego, there were 2 major wildfires, very much like what's going on in LA right now, that shut down the entire city for days. Like, work shut down a bunch of times, and it was like the air quality was so bad. It was basically like snowing ash on us and stuff, and we had to walk around with dust masks and stuff, so you weren't like constantly breathing that stuff in. But then one time in 2011, there was a major power outage that shut down all of Southern California for up to 48 hours for some people, And so it was like in those moments that I realized, like, disaster can happen at any time, and it's not a conspiracy. Like, shit happens, right? So it's good to be prepared for some of that kind of stuff. So I wanted to kind of go around and ask, besides COVID, has any of you guys ever experienced some kind of natural disaster? We'll start with Huds.
Sure. Yeah. So it's interesting. Back where I grew up, it's a little bit more out of the country, further out of Philadelphia. And there were a couple times where we had power outages, nothing major. But then there was one where I think we were out of power for like 3 days. And I remember we had a new neighbor move in next door, and he had a generator. My dad had never thought to actually get a generator or that we would even need one. But then when they were talking and like how simple it was for him and his family to function and not ever have to worry about the power going out, my dad ended up buying one himself. And so I think there was only like 2 more times we had to use it. But it just came in such handy when that happened, because there was like another time where we were out for 24 hours. And then there was another time where I think it was like another 2 days or like a 3-day period. So, oh my God, just being prepared and having that, like, you kind of felt like a king when you look around the cul-de-sac and you're one of the only houses that is fully functional. Fridge is working. Everything is working. You're comfortable. The heat's working. So that really, like, having a generator and being prepared for those types of things, even if it's just a few $100 to have it and never need it, it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
That's actually that's a good reminder, because that's something I've been meaning to do for a while, because like the heat in my house, it's all electric baseboard, and which is expensive as hell. So I tend not to use it. And I have a gas stove that I use most of the time to heat my house. But even that, to start it and to run it and the fans and stuff, it all requires electricity. And so for a while now, because we have power outages here all the time. In fact, I bitch at Thor about it all the time. Like, Thor, what the fuck is going on, man? Like, why can't you guys keep the power on? But one of the things that I was originally thinking about was getting solar panels for my house and then a battery backup system in the garage. But then I was like, man, at the very least, all I need is a gas powered generator out in my patio, and I could run my fridge and my fireplace and keep at least the heat and the food cold, in an emergency. So thanks for the reminder. I need to do that. Let's go over to Tarl. You live in Florida, right? You guys have like hurricanes and shit there. You're not in Florida. Where are you at?
No, far north. We have tornadoes.
Yeah, tornadoes.
So,
okay.
Yeah, so we had to deal with a couple of those. Did the old bad advice of parking under a bridge, taking cover under a bridge during a tornado. So got to experience some pretty fierce winds. So in terms of natural disasters, that's the worst I've personally had to deal with. So, and that was all due to, my grandfather was actually a weather radar specialist in the Navy right? So he actually picked one of the best spots on the planet in terms of overall weather with the least natural disasters. Tornadoes are the worst we got to worry about here, fortunately. So
I had a natural disasters class in college, and I thought it was going to be this cool class learning about wildfires and stuff. It ended up being a geology class. But one of the things that the instructor showed us was a map of all the disasters in the United States, and there was like one little place in I think it was Indiana, like one small, like almost like a county where there's never been any real natural disasters, but the rest of the country there's some kind of natural disaster going on. So yeah, it's not conspiracy theory or being paranoid. It's like, it's being smart because shit happens everywhere. Wraith, you've lived a long time. Like, you ever deal with any disasters?
Yeah, but being overseas and stuff in the military, but beyond that, I mean, in the U.S. here, it's been, I spent 1.5 years in Pennsylvania working on a job, and every time it snowed, every time it rained, the power went out. So we did the same thing. We got a generator so that we could actually have power, and we lived in a trailer, so it was fairly easy to heat the trailer. So, but, it took probably 2 times of spending 2 days without electricity before I said, yeah, we're just going to spend the money. So, and then, I've lived in flood zones and stuff like that where, water gets up to the top of the dike, and you try to wonder what's going to happen if it comes over. But luckily, I've never had to experience that. But it can be challenging, and you do have to prepare for it.
Yeah. I've never lived in well, no, I did. One time I lived in, when I was living in San Diego, I lived really close to Mission Valley. And if anyone, has ever, or lives out in San Diego, they know that Mission Valley is actually one big floodplain. And they have like all the malls and stuff in town, like right down by the river. And it's like, they are this close to 100-year flood time. And that whole valley is going to be wiped out. It's only a matter of time. It's kind of funny.
I'll tell you what, when it comes to floods, that sucks. So my shore house actually did flood once, and it ended up costing, I think, like $20,000 or something. I remember when I asked my dad, I wasn't really directly involved with it. I think I was at college at the time when it occurred. But them even being able to pay for and take care of that at the time, that's a huge thing. Like when we talk like emergency funds and things like that, imagine the flooding occurs. You need to pay to get like the baseline gutted out and replaced, and you don't have the money to do so. The longer you wait, the worse that damage becomes. So that's another thing, just having that emergency fund, because you never know when something like that's going to happen.
Or at least having insurance, but man, if you're in a place that's a known flood zone, trying to get insurance in that, it's going to be hard. So yeah,
you definitely pay a premium for it. That's for sure.
Yeah. So I have a list of 20 various ways. We might not get all through all of them today, but we'll see. We'll try to get through all of them. And then we'll go around just sort of talking about them. But before we get into that, I do want to let everyone know that my new book, Get Her to Fuck You Again, is now available on Audible. So let's play a commercial for that, and then we'll get to these 20 different ways that you can stay unfucked in a bad situation.
Are you tired of the dead bedroom? Wondering what happened to the passion, the connection, and the spark? Well, here's your answer. Introducing Get Her to Fuck You Again, a red pill guide to fix a dead bedroom, now on Amazon. This isn't about manipulation or tricks. It's about real strategies that work. If your wife has stopped being intimate with you, it's not because the love is gone. It's because the attraction is gone. And that's fixable. This book will teach you the skills to lead your marriage, rebuild your confidence, and become the man she can't stop thinking about. 3 reasons to get this book. 1. It breaks the cycle. You'll learn how to stop doing the same things that are killing her attraction and start doing the things that reignite it. 2. It's practical and proven. With clear, actionable steps, you'll build yourself into the man you were always meant to be. 3. It works for men like you. Paul Bauer has helped hundreds of men just like you fix their dead bedrooms. And now, it's your turn. Don't let another day go by feeling frustrated and disconnected. Go to Amazon right now and buy Get Her to Fuck You Again. Read it, apply it, and watch your marriage transform. The connection isn't gone forever. You just need the roadmap to get it back. And this book is it.
Edgy title, actionable information. All right. Speaking of which, so I've got a list here, and we'll sort of go around the horn about this. But the first thing on the list here is create a comprehensive emergency plan. So outline evacuation routes, family meeting points, emergency contact numbers, include contingency plans for different types of disasters. What do you think about that one, Huds?
Yeah, so that's actually an interesting point because I haven't written out or prepared for something like that. And it's a good reminder so that you know what to do. I tend to just react, which obviously is not the best if something crazy would happen. But I also, I work from home and I'm not out and about a lot, and I typically live in apartments, so things are well taken care of. But that's a really good idea, is to write it out, like when they said emergency numbers and things like that. But at the same time, we all have smartphones now, so I don't know. It's an interesting thought to think of that I think made a lot more sense back in the day. The family meeting points. What's that all about? Because maybe I'm not understanding it.
Well, think about this, man. Like, what if it's a fire situation and your house is on fire, and let's say the cell phone towers are burning down and stuff like that because this natural disaster has taken over the city, so you can't call each other, and you can't go home. Like, where the fuck do you go, right? So your family needs to know, hey, if this event happens, where do we meet up? Where do we all get together? I think that would be, it would be a pretty serious fucking situation, but if you want to be prepared for anything, that it would be a good thing to have, don't you think?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's it's very true. Just to kind of have that in plan, because gosh, yeah, the LA wildfires, it's a prime example of things that we all kind of knew something like that was coming, but to the gravity of this situation, if they all had these types of plans in place, I think a lot more people would be in better shape. And I don't remember what the death count was the last time I looked. I think it was 24 people were dead. I'm sure it's more than that now. Just by having this plan in place, that number could have been 0.
Well, you got to say, what's the population of LA? Like a few million people. So yeah. only 24 dead. That's pretty solid. That's a pretty solid.
Well, but if you go to a FEMA website, they have templates that you can do the plan. Is it all encompassing? No, but it gets you thinking about that. And you need to have 2 plans. You need to have a plan for what happens if you have to stay in, bug in, or if you have to bug out. A lot of people, and that's one of my issues with a lot of these preppers. They do the bug in, But like I said, you get a tornado that takes out your compound. What are you going to do then? And it doesn't seem that a lot of them prepare for that.
That was my big
right.
That was my biggest gripe with the show Doomsday Preppers. And I don't know how much of it was because it was Hollywood and they were trying to make a concise show, but a lot of preppers on that show would only be thinking of one specific scenario. Okay, we definitely know that it's going to be a global pandemic, so this is what we're prepared for. And it's okay, but what if it's not a global pandemic? What if it's a war type situation? Or what if it's just a massive was it super volcano explosion? What if it's that? You're not preparing for any other possible contingency. It's only this one thing. That was my biggest gripe with that.
Yeah, I noticed that too. I've noticed that I won't even try to give a percentage out of my ass, pull numbers, but I'll say that I've noticed quite a few preppers that I've seen tend to focus on acquiring stuff rather than skills, tactics, and mindset. Like they have a little bit of that, but it largely revolves around acquiring a base that's fortified and trying to basically build a castle underground, more or less. And just create a fortified bunker and dig in and hope they can ride out whatever's going to happen in the most extreme situation. But it's like you're preparing for the most extreme situation where, like, you and your family, like, realistically, like, you're not going to repopulate the planet. We've already done the math. One family can't repopulate the planet. So you're just going to, like, live out the rest of your days in an underground bunker. And that's if that happens, right? What is the most likely scenario? A lot of these people are more or less acquiring a fancy security blanket to make them feel better rather than actually preparing themselves mentally for what they might have to do. Good example, the coming up with a family plan. Why do you need to come up with a plan? Well, because if the downstairs is on fire and you can't get to the normal doors, you might have to go out a window, and there's going to be safer windows and more dangerous windows to go out, or windows that are, higher up that might need a ladder, an emergency ladder. I have an emergency ladder for my high up window, right? So I can get down with, and my son, a child can get down safely, and he can set this up himself, right? Just as an example of having a plan, and little things like that. And it's all about the mindset more than like the stuff and the things like, oh, we've got food. Yeah, I've got emergency food too. Do I have a fucking bomb-proof bunker? Hell no. Oh, like, if that shit happens, like, what good is a bomb-proof bunker gonna do if we're literally got radiation? Like, then you have to go to a next level. Most of these people aren't prepared for that level of fallout.
One thing, even if you don't have radiation, you got to think about something.
Get yourself if you need to.
Go back to medieval times, and what was the worst case scenario in the medieval time? Say society collapses, and you're on. Everyone knows you're a prepper because you made everybody aware that you prep. People forget about the sieges of the Middle Ages. So you've got to be able to, like you said, initially staying in your home is probably the best bet, but you've got to plan for, what happens when your supplies start running low. You're going to have to get out and you're going to have to search for supplies. And you've got to make contingencies, plans for stuff like that. And the show you're talking about, I watched it too. They didn't seem to have a lot of contingencies.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing I liked about it was at the end, like the prepper experts or whatever would rate them. And I loved it when the people got a shitty ass rating. And then the people were like, well, I disagree with that. Like it was good. Hey, Vidar's here. Hey, Vidar is I'm going to unmute you here, or you got to unmute yourself. There you go. Hey, have you ever been lived through a disaster situation?
What was that? Have I ever been
lived through a disaster situation?
He's been with the same woman for 40 years.
I live in a fire area, and was evacuated one year. So I learned from that that I probably wouldn't evacuate again, depending, stay and try to save my house if it was another fire.
Did you lose your house during the evacuation?
No, I didn't. It didn't really come that close, but people that were in that area, a couple people saved their houses by staying and watering their roofs. That's
actually a good point, because when I grew up in the mountains outside of Denver, in a town called Conifer, and we lived in a place that always caught on fire. Like when I was a kid, there was the Murphy Gulch fire that almost came and took down our house. And my dad, he set up a sprinkler system on the roof so that if we did have to evacuate in a situation like that, he could just turn the water on, and then like we could evacuate, and the water, it would, probably save the house. Luckily we never had to use that stuff. And then my parents finally moved away before the last set of fires. So it's not an issue anymore where we're at now, but
right. I did hear about one individual in these fires in California that he had prepared by buying a bunch of those sprinklers that they just rotate back and forth for your lawn. They put a fan of water, and he put a bunch of those on his house and then evacuated. And when he came back, his house was fine. Houses around him burned. Every house around him burned.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
That's a smart thing to do, though. It's not on my list, but the next thing I have here is build a 72-hour emergency kit. So pack non-perishable food, water, 1 gallon per person per day, first aid supplies, flashlights, batteries, and a multi-tool. What do you think about that one? We'll throw that over to Tarl first this time.
Well, I mean, going back to, my grandfather made a decision of where to, nest after he left the Navy, a full career, and he was a scoutmaster, right? So my dad ended up being one of his scouts, so I grew up with the motto, always be prepared. So yeah, you should always, like I said, I'm not going to say that I have the detailed plan, down to the letter, but I have the framework, right? I have certain things, emergency food, water, all that good stuff, ability to bug out, right? And go relatively quickly, right? Obviously got a family, so relatively is a key term there. But that's, if need be, it's all about having the mindset and the tools available and then knowing what to do. So yeah, definitely, man. Always be prepared, as the motto says.
Yeah. What do you think about 72-hour emergency kit, Wraith?
I have one, and I have a 48-hour in each one of my vehicles.
Oh, that's good. What part of the country are you in, Wraith?
I'm on the other side of the mountain from you.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Especially like out here, in like in Colorado, especially if you're on the other side of the mountain, like over in the Denver area, there's some nasty ass snowstorms where I remember when I was a kid, my dad couldn't get his car up the mountain, and he had to park at the bottom of the mountain and just stay there overnight. Like that shit happens in Colorado a lot, where people are like eating peanut butter in their car, and like they have blankets and stuff just in case they have to camp out in their car for the night and wait for the graders to come by. That kind of stuff's smart to have in your car. Yeah, that's a good call on that one. What do you think, Vidar, about 72-hour emergency kit or any kind of emergency kit like that?
Well, a 48-hour, 72-hour kit in your vehicle and a mini bug out bag is really important, I think, especially depending on where you live. I live in the Mojave Desert, so traveling an hour into the desert to work, just in case of any disaster, I have that also. There's I think being prepared for a 72-hour would be the very minimum. I think at your home you should have much more than that. And one of the things that people need to realize is water and the amount of water you will probably need. A friend of mine one time drove this point home that he lived in a small community that had a water main break. And when that water main break, they had no water in that community for 3 weeks. And they had bottled water for people to bring in. But without water to flush your toilet, life gets pretty miserable. So he always emphasized also, you want to have enough water that you can flush your toilets, or area outside you can dig a hole, because you don't want that overflowing in your house. Myself, I have a large above ground pool, and we also have some 55-gallon drums we store for drinking water, but I have a large above ground pool that we maintain, and the only treatment that we put in it is chlorine, which chlorine will dissipate. So that can all be converted to drinking water, and it can all be used for, you take a few gallons of water and flush your toilet down when there's number 2. And that would make life a lot easier. So it's something, some of those things are important to remember about too, when it's not end of the world, but inconvenience.
Well, that brings us to the next one, which is stockpile water and filtration systems. So store at least 3 to 7 days of water per person and invest in portable water filtration systems or purification tablets. And that's important because if you guys ever heard of the rule of threes?
What's the rule of threes?
The rule of threes is you can live you can live 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, and then 3 weeks without food. Right.
Gotcha.
So you can live a lot longer without the food, but that water, you're if you don't have water for 3 days, you're up shit's creek. So having water is almost more important than food. And a lot of times, if you ever watch like outdoor survival shows, right? And I was an outdoor survival show addict, man. My favorite show was Dual Survival. And it had like these military guy and a hippie guy, right? And the first 2 seasons were great. And what Viking was talking about is guys don't spend a lot of time working on skills. One of the things that Cody Lundeen said, he was one of the hippie guys, he was like, knowledge doesn't weigh anything. You know, if you know how to do this stuff, you don't have to carry a lot of gear around. But one of the big things I learned from Cody Lundeen is like on these shows, there's a big emphasis on catching food and like eating bugs and like all this kind of stuff because that's cool, right? It gets people to watch. He goes, but in reality, if you're like in he goes, most people are rescued within 3 days. So he goes, your primary concern is shelter and water, and like you can go multiple days without, you can go weeks without eating. So like you're not going to be out there eating all these bugs and shit. Like you're probably going to get rescued before you need to eat a bug. But making sure that you have some kind of water system. A really great thing I'd like to bring hiking is a life straw, which is like, it allows you to drink water like right out of the river and stuff like that. Cause it's got it filters out all the microbial bacteria and stuff like that. But water is huge.
It's super interesting because when you guys were talking about like doomsday bunkers and stuff like that, I totally forgotten this girl that I had dated years ago, and like years ago. This is like college time period, and her house, the basement was half finished, half unfinished. In the half unfinished, her dad kept digging and literally built out an entire doomsday bunker there. And when we're talking about having more water than food, it was almost like an equal ratio, or if not more food, more canned food than it was water. So it's really interesting that you're saying that because, God, the amount of cans of Spam back there, I always just thought it was just funny, but it's there's like levels to this, and he was just one of those insane people that went all the way with it. But I find that very interesting, and it's a good thing to remember. Water is most important.
Yeah, Spam is actually a really good thing to have on hand. Survival. What
a lot of people don't understand though is, in order to eat, you have to have water, because your stomach requires fluids to digest food. Yeah,
good point. But the food storage, that brings us to the next concept. So keep a 1 to 2 month supply of shelf stable foods like canned goods, freeze dried meals, and rice or beans. I'll say this about canned food. This one thing that I learned about keeping canned food, because I have a shitload of canned food myself. Most canned food will outlast the expiration date. But the one thing that is not that great is anything that has any kind of tomato base in it, right? Like tomato sauce, canned tomatoes. One thing I like to have is canned stew and canned chili, but those have tomato base in it, and that tomato is acidic and it'll actually eat through the can eventually. And so then it's not so good anymore. But most of the time that canned food, like spam is like the perfect, storable canned food that'll last forever. But yeah, another thing I have too is I have buckets of like, that last 25 years of like freeze dried food. When I was dating Red Pill Chick, her brother was in the National Guard, and he would go out on these like, monthly mission training things, and he would come back and they'd have shitloads of MREs, and he just gave me trash bags full of like Army MREs and stuff. And so I have a bunch of MREs on hand, and all that kind of stuff's good, in that kind of situation. Do any of you guys keep storable food around?
Yep. I got several buckets of emergency food, about a month's supply for our family if we need it. So
That's good. What about you, Wraith?
I have some. I'm trying to actually find another place to be as I'm getting ready to retire. So I'm trying not to move a bunch of food and stuff anymore. So we're going through the process of trying to use everything we've got. And I'm going to convert over to, like 4 Patriot stuff, more freeze dried.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, some of that stuff too, it doesn't taste too bad. Some of it's pretty fucking nasty though.
Yeah.
Someone's asking in the chat here, where's Glenn? Glenn's fucking lazy today and he didn't show up to the DragonShip. So yeah, we're streaming to his channel, but he didn't show up today. All right, let's see here. Vidart, do you keep any storable food?
Maybe 3-year supply.
You have a three-year supply. Is it all
Love it.
freeze-dried stuff, or is it in the freezer? Like what is it?
Well, I have quite a large pantry that I rotate food through. I also have a chamber vac that I've stored lots of beans, rice, dry goods, and it lasts for a long time once you get all that oxygen out. So
Yeah. That was another good thing about that Doomsday Prepper show is they actually showed you how to store food. Like you could take eggs and like cover the egg in oil and keep it at like a relatively cool, but it doesn't have to be like, cold like a fridge, and it'll actually store for months,
Well, we actually have eggs in jars, and you put in this it's a food grade lime, and they'll last for 3 years.
Wow. Yeah.
And at room temperature.
Yeah, you could
super
pickle it too.
interesting.
You can pickle eggs too, and pickling will keep it too. What's fascinating is do you guys have any Mormon friends? Anybody? Any Mormon friends? I live on the western slope of Colorado, so I'm really close to Utah, which is like, the Mormon capital of the universe. And if you go to Utah, like almost every house there, they all have basement and they all have big, huge like storage pantries there because prepping is actually a part of the Mormon religion. They actually like teach it in the church, and they have like special events where they put on classes about how to store food and all that kind of stuff. And my former in-laws live out there, and in their house, they call it Mormon storage. They're like, yeah, we have our Mormon storage down here, which is, all the down in the basement where it's nice and cool and you can store lots of canned goods and, whatever. It's pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah, there's a few churches, I guess you could say, that prepare for the persecution of Christianity, right? So prepping is part of the religion, more or less.
Yeah.
Well, prepping is common sense, in my opinion. And,
yeah, exactly.
Being prepared, and there's you always have to listen to that little voice inside that's talking to you. One of the things about prepping and being prepared and storage of food that I'm sure you probably have it on your list to eventually get to is you need to have a way of defending it. I was watching one of the prepper shows, and there was this one individual on there that was showing all of the things that he had for prepping, and they got down and asked him if he had firearms. This guy was totally against guns.
Yes.
He didn't, and I just laughed, and I said to myself, he's not storing food for himself. He's storing it for the toughest guy on the block.
Yeah. There's actually been a few episodes of the Doomsday Preppers like that, but yeah, it's always like the hippy dippy crowd, and they all got beautiful gardens, and they're like, we're just going to invite the community in, and it's all going to be one big community experience. And it's like, you don't know like human nature, right? Like we
like, yeah, I hope it goes that way if shit hits the fan, but
yeah.
Realistically speaking, looking at human history, there's a good chance that at least one of the crazy motherfuckers is going to act up. Just saying.
There's a really good novel series I read once called, I think it's called The Survivors. And there's like 6 books, and it's all about the end of it starts with a global collapse of the dollar, right? And so they call it the crunch, and it's the whole globe basically just devolves into chaos. And that's exactly what happens is, like, you know, these people that were preppers, they create compounds and stuff like that. But then there was a whole group of people that became roving like warlords, and they were going into towns and like robbing towns and stuff like that. And so, yeah, if you don't have any way of defending what you've prepped for, like all your stockpiled water and your stockpiled food, and you don't have a way of defending it, inevitably there's someone that's going to come and try to take it, you know? And so you have to be able to, especially if it's like a real serious, like end of civilization type situation. But that does bring us to the next one, which is keep guns and ammunition. So secure firearms and ammunition for self-defense and hunting if necessary. Ensure all users are trained in safety and handling.
Yeah, no, 100% on this one. This is one that I do. When it comes to food storage, I was just thinking about that. Ever since I had gotten with my girl, it's been a little over 4 years now. I have not done my grocery shopping. So I probably should at least do one trip to get my stockpiles up on that front. But when it comes to guns and ammunition, yeah, we are pretty set to go here if something were to happen and we needed to defend ourselves.
Yeah, I like to buy ammo when Republicans are in office, because ammo is a lot cheaper. And then whenever Democrats take office, everyone thinks that they're going to take the guns away. So they all just like mad rush the store and buy up all the guns and ammo. And so then there's like a supply and demand issue. And so the ammo goes up. So I like to like hold during Democrat years and then buy during
that's really smart. I hadn't thought about that, because I've seen so much fluctuation in ammo prices. And one of my friends, he's out in LA too. And he, back when like COVID happened, he ended up buying like pallets of ammo, and then he ended up flipping it for like extra $30,000 or something, just in the first year. And I think in total he's made well over like $100,000 doing flips like this. So it's really interesting that you say that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something I've noticed over the years, because I mean, I used to really follow politics, and I don't really anymore, because I noticed that since I cut the news out of my life, that my mindset's much healthier. But I just sort of noticed this trend that whenever, you know, like when Barack Obama took office, like everyone was like, oh, they're going to take all of our shit, right? And then when Biden took office, everyone was like, oh, they're going to take all of our shit. And it's like, they haven't actually taken any of our shit yet. But people get so scared that they just like, all of a sudden the gun sales go up like crazy. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll at least keep an eye on the market that way, you know, and sort of turn it into a positive. Before we get into the next one here, let's play a commercial for Thor's book, Dominant Masculine Presence, and then we'll get back to this list. Have you ever felt like you're fading into the background? Like the world doesn't want you to stand out, to be strong, to be masculine? You're not imagining it. For decades, society has been reshaping the role of men, leaving many feeling lost and disconnected. It's time to change the narrative. In A Dominant Masculine Presence by R.P. Thor, discover the path to reclaim your strength, your confidence, and your identity as a man. This isn't about fitting into a stereotype. It's about embracing your natural traits and honing them into a powerful presence. Learn the 7 skills that every man needs to lead with authority, read body language, and control his emotions. R.P. Thor breaks it down with clear examples and practical advice to help you transform your life. It's time to stop apologizing for who you are. It's time to lead with pride and courage. A Dominant Masculine Presence gives you the tools to do just that. Get A Dominant Masculine Presence by R.P. Thor on Amazon or listen on Audible. Don't let society dictate who you should be. Claim your strength and redefine your future.
Wow. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Sure.
Nice
Yeah,
to
I
see
wanted to-
everybody here.
How you
I did wanna
feeling, Thor? Are
highlight
you doing
something
all
real
right?
quick.
What's that?
I said, how you feeling, Thor?
Recovery's been a little tough. It's 2 weeks out of surgery. I had the physical therapist and the occupational therapist say I'm doing way too much.
I would say so too.
Yeah, they measured me upper body, lower body, and said I was above average as just a normal man. So I was high functioning, but I'm basically tearing myself down. So I got to get more rest. And yeah, I feel it for sure. So they want me to rest up for at least another 2 to 4 weeks, and then I got another procedure to do. But yeah, other than that, I'm doing okay. Back to this prep thing. Another thing you guys can think about. I've been down that road and enjoyed it for many years. You know, I'm 100% off grid, on grid, doesn't matter, both water, electricity. That would be one of my first considerations. If I'm in a home I'm going to be in for more than 7 years, I would consider getting my own electricity and my own water if I'm in an area to do such a thing. It's just smart. And then the other thing is if, instead of storing ammo and all that, well, you can consider a couple other things, you know, not just food, but small first aid kits. You know, have 6 of those available for trade. Those are really handy. There's other things like that you can do as well, you know, small tools, rechargeable flashlights, things like that. Anything to do with electricity. Electricity would become hugely valuable to somebody if the grid went down. Just keep in mind, if we had an ice storm and the grid went down, electricity would be really valuable to you, and you could trade electricity, believe it or not. If you look into this, that would be useful as well. Batteries, all those sort of things are great to have on hand in addition to your ammo, and they're cheaper too. And then take a look. We talk about stored food. Hey, that's great. I love it. What about live food?
Oh,
Chickens?
keep chickens on hand. And
How about fish? I mean, I raised thousands of fish in my greenhouse before. So much so that I hate fish now. But it's not that hard. It's a fun hobby. I mean, heck, why not raise a bunch of dogs and cats?
All right,
Food's
we're not
cheap.
eating the cats and the dogs. We're not eating the cats and the dogs. Please no.
Well, I mean, what you have is you have something that's tradable. And if it's the right kind of dog, you know, it's something you could easily trade for a lot. And the food's really cheap. Store some pet food. Not only could you eat it, they can too. If you look at some of the storable pet food, it lasts for a decade and it's shelf stable. And yeah, there might be preservative in it, but if it's emergency stuff, so what? It's usually nutritionally complete as well. Just food for thought. Yeah, you don't want to throw a bunch of kittens at your enemies, but hey, you know.
cat nunchucks.
Yeah.
Just
I wanted to highlight something in the chat before we move on. Somebody was commenting, and then he went on TV to tell, you know, all this stuff, you know, yeah, don't do that, guys, right? It's one thing to like give some disclosure about your preparedness, but at a certain point, you don't want to show your whole card, your whole hand, right? You don't want to show all your cards. Like if you've got certain capabilities, you don't want to broadcast those capabilities to the world and, you know, be like, hey guys, I leave my back door open at night and you can just walk in, like, you know, or I leave the key under the mat. You know, it's just like, are you serious? Like, you're just going to tell that? Like, that's the definition of self-snitching, right? Even though you're not like, you know, doing anything bad in those situations, you're leading to something bad because you're giving people information they don't need to have.
Unless you got a pit with punji sticks in it and you're hungry.
Yeah,
Then you can tell
Glenn
that
leaves
door's
his
open.
back door open. Glenn does that.
Oh my God.
Actually,
my.
So Thor, you brought up one of the next items, which was first aid and medical supplies. So maintain a fully stocked first aid kit, including bandages, antiseptics, pain relievers, and any necessary prescription medications. One thing that a lot of guys don't know is that antibiotics, you can get them over the counter. They sell them as fish antibiotics, but they're human grade and like amoxicillin. You can buy fish amoxicillin. It's literally the same thing that you would get if you needed amoxicillin. But a lot of people don't know this either, that antibiotics are only good for bacterial infections. They're not good for viral infections. So if you had COVID, your antibiotics aren't going to help you with that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Tractor Supply can, huh?
Tractor Supply.
Tractor Supply, you can get that stuff.
Ivermectin.
You can get ivermectin. Yeah, because they sell that for horses. It's like a horse deworming stuff.
Mhm.
But that you can get
Antiviral.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you have a Tractor Supply there, we have several Tractor Supplies here out in the cow pasture. So we're
Any good feed store will have it.
yeah.
And it works.
Works great.
Does anyone else want to touch on the medical supplies?
Well, you might have trouble finding the antibiotics, even the fish antibiotics anymore.
At least here.
They have, I believe it's nationwide, that they stopped selling them without a prescription from your vet, and that was last July. So in June, I stocked up on quite a few. There are a few feed stores that will still sell it, but it's hush hush. Then I think it may just be the supplies they still have. So if you can get it, you should get it. I think this was a big pharma push to have that happen.
So there's ways to get brand name antibiotics of every variety. If you were to work with people in this group, it's not hard. There's absolutely ways to get all of that stuff legally and with prescriptions at very reduced rate. So that you can get them if you want them, and they're storable.
The last time I ordered fish stuff, I think I got it off of Amazon, but yeah, if they've truly banned it, it probably wouldn't be able to do that. There was also
realize like Mexico and some other countries have reciprocal prescription legislation, which means that any doctor in any of those countries that have that can write prescriptions for anything you need. And once you have that, all the online pharmacies open up to you at 1/10 of the cost of regular pharmacies. So
yeah,
you need to do a little digging.
Yeah,
I know that they are. I do want to say I know that they are still available. It may be more difficult, but I know for a fact because I love myself some Steven Crowder. I find him hilarious, and that being more of a right wing political show. One of their sponsors, and I know that Better Bachelor actually has a sponsor for it too, where you can order these kits that do have them. So it's definitely out there. I'm trying to do the research on it right now.
Wellness.com, and it essentially operates on what I just said, reciprocal prescription laws in different countries. Once you have a country like that, it's the same pharmaceutical. It's fully legally acceptable to pass borders and customs and all that stuff once you have that.
Gotcha.
A lot of them have the laws that regular telemed or even digital med, which is text and email, is acceptable. And those kits are very actually good. I've seen them with Cipro in it, and with Rimadyl and all the antivirals. So it seems pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd add one thing to this. When it comes to antibiotics, the key thing that people need to understand, what most doctors are going to be concerned about is whether or not you're using them correctly, right? And also not self-diagnosing and trying to use them to fight colds when that's a viral infection. The antibiotics aren't going to do anything but fuck up your gut biome, basically. That's another thing that a lot of people don't understand, is that taking antibiotics does mess up your gut biome, which is going to reduce your ability to absorb food and nutrients and make you potentially unhealthy if you do it too much. And another mistake that people commonly make when they take antibiotics is that they don't finish them. They don't do the whole course. And this leads to the biggest problem that a lot of doctors and that our species is facing is bacteria immunity to antibiotics because of abuse, misuse, and overuse of these things. So that's why they're trying to crack down on them, just for a little clarity.
No, that makes sense. Moving on, the next one we have here is communication devices. This sort of goes back to what Huds was talking about before with the cell phones. But you want to have battery-operated hand crank radios, walkie-talkies, or a satellite phone for staying informed and communicating when cell networks are down. What was that? Okay, hold on. We're professional podcasters. But
that was Thor's daughter. He's got to step out. She's here. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But yeah. So anyway, battery powered radios, walkie-talkies, satellite phones for when the cell networks are down. So that would be a good thing. Thor mentioned this too, backup power solutions. We talked about that as far as generators, right? But invest in solar chargers, portable power banks, or a generator with extra fuel. Let's see here. Personal protection equipment. This would be good, especially if you're in a fire situation, right? Like if you're in the LA area, there's a lot of smoke and ash and stuff in the air, and all that kind of stuff is not good for your lungs. So having masks, respirators in an environment like that would be good. Gloves, goggles to protect against smoke, dust, airborne viruses, all that kind of stuff would be good too. Let's see. I'm trying to get through some of the, like a bunch of these quick so that we can keep talking about them, but we got a lot here. Fire safety tools. So fire extinguishers, fire blankets, and masks specifically designed for,
oh my God,
smoke.
Fire extinguishers, guys, pay attention to expiration dates. Nobody does that. They buy a fire extinguisher and then they never look at it again. Make sure to pay attention. They do last a while, but pay attention to your expiration dates.
Well, guys, let me ask you this. A lot of times the libs say, hey, you don't need guns because there's police, right? Like, why do you need fire extinguishers? There's fire department.
Yeah, because you never know what the timing is going to be for them to arrive. Specifically, this building that I'm in right now, God, thank the Lord that I am going to be moving soon. But they've had a faulty alarm system for the entire time I've been here, and constantly it's just going off. Like it would be like multiple times a week for no reason. And so we're like the boy who cried wolf with the fire department coming out. So whereas they used to be able to, or they used to be here in like literally like a minute, now sometimes it'll take them like 15 minutes to get here. So like understand that there is a variable, and you also don't know the traffic conditions for the fire department to get there. It's always a variable. So anytime you can do something that can protect you, that allows you to protect yourself a little bit more, it's well worth it.
Yeah, and going back to the guns and the police thing, it's like when seconds count, the police will be there in 10 minutes. Yeah,
exactly. Well, it's the same thing with a fire, right? It's
right.
Like the example, I just had an issue with one of my PCs. The new game I was playing caused the plastic to overheat on the badly engineered connector on the 4090 and fused it, which caused burning plastic. Now, that fire didn't get out of control. But the thing is that if it did, rather than even having to go out to the hallway to get a fire extinguisher and then hoping that it wasn't expired, like Hud said, I've got not one, but two. I got a full size fire extinguisher right by the computers if I need it. And then I got another one right there handy. Like, say if I need to put the fire out to get to the other fire extinguisher. It's just like, so it's being prepared and being extra prepared. And it wasn't that expensive. That's like $150. And I just got to check and switch them out every couple of years. That's a simple thing. And some people might be like, well, that's a lot of work. Well, it's a lot less work than if shit goes down.
Yeah, it's a lot less work than rebuilding your whole fucking house.
Yeah, exactly. Filing, even if you got insurance, like having to deal with all that. Like people don't understand the inconvenience that some of these things can have if they actually happen.
The time.
You're never going to get back.
Yeah. Oh, this guy, or AJ here says, knowing also how to combat the type of fire with the proper agents is a wealth of knowledge. That's true. I mean, like, if it's an electrical fire, you don't want to throw water on it,
Oh man. And like kitchen fires, when it's like an oil fire and then they throw water on that too, and then it goes everywhere. Yeah. Like, I don't know if, like, I think everybody knows it, but if you have like a kitchen fire, like a stove fire, you're supposed to just turn the heat off and let it sit. It just burns itself out. But instead, everybody like throws it around and freaks out, and that's what causes a lot of
it.
Yeah,
and that's what aerosolizes it and causes it to become more flammable.
You got a lid on that pan, just put the lid on it.
Yeah,
take out the oxygen there. The next one here, this sort of goes to what Wraith was saying earlier about too many guys are thinking about bugging in and they're not thinking enough about bugging out, but emergency shelter, right? Having portable tents, sleeping bags, or thermal blankets in the case of evacuation. And that requires sleeping outdoors, right? You have to bug out where you're going to sleep, so having some kind of tents or something like that would be good. Anything you want to add to that, Wraith?
No, not really. But other than the fact that there's numerous books that you can start looking at to give you checklists for those bags and stuff, and you're gonna come up with fire starters and stuff like that. I don't have any problem with fire starters. I actually have some, but you better learn how to use them. Practice before you use the stuff in the bag, or have to use the stuff in the bag, I guess is the best way to put it. Everyone knows how to get in a sleeping bag. Not everyone knows how to start a fire without a lighter or matches.
Yeah. One of the best survival books I ever read was called The Green Beret Survival Handbook by Michael Hawk. And yes, his name is Mike Hawk. One of the things that he says in there is on the fire starting, and he has, all the stuff about how to make bow drills and hand drills and rubbing sticks together. And he goes, having a Bic lighter, he's like, they're cheap. You can fill your rucksack full of them. And he goes, there's a million reasons to have a lighter and not a single reason not to. And he goes, the million reasons is the amount of strokes it takes rubbing sticks together to get a fucking fire going.
Yep. I can vouch that my dad made me learn how to do that as part of the Boy Scout routine when I was 5 years old, and I did it. All right.
Yeah.
And I would recommend it. It's doable, but it's a pain in the fucking ass.
Oh, it's a lot of work.
So now, as example, fun fact, he says that he gave that advice, but I always, especially during the winter, I carry around a Bic lighter and a Ziploc bag in my coat pocket. So anytime I go out anywhere, it doesn't matter. I always have the ability to summon fire.
Yeah. I have in my, when I go hiking up in the woods, and I'm only planning on going out for a day hike, but I always bring a backpack full of gear, in case something happens. I break my leg out there and I'm stuck, right? Whatever. And I have my sack is full of at least like 5 or 6 lighters. And then I also have several ferro rods in case, something happens where the lighters aren't working right. And I at least have a ferro rod to start a fire with. But it's like, God, there was another survivalist on Dual Survival, the first season, and he talked about was it the 3 or the 4 C's? But it was like, you need to have cover, you need to have combustion, you need to have a cutting tool, and you need to have cordage. It was 4 C's. And he goes, if you have those 4 things, you can pretty much do whatever you need to do, which was, good knowledge type thing. Cash reserve, having extra money on hand. So keep small bills and coins on hand, as ATMs and credit card systems may not work during disasters. I noticed this during the power outage in 2011. The gas pumps weren't working, or they weren't taking credit cards because like all the power was down. And so I started just keeping an extra, $20, in my car, just in case I had to pay for cash for something like that. And then on hand, I keep a little bit of cash just in case. But you guys ever think about that? Just having extra cash because your credit cards might not work?
Yeah.
Always. I'm a type 1 diabetic. So basically going on the topic of, are you prepared? Well, technically speaking, I'm shit out of luck if shit hits the fan, because I have to keep my insulin cool, right? It has to stay above freezing, but below 86 degrees. Right. If it goes above or below, then it becomes inert. It doesn't work anymore. So I need a refrigerator. But that's a whole other side point. Damn it. My brain farted. What was the topic again? What was the
cash reserve? Having
cash reserve. Yeah, that's right. So I always have to keep some sort of cash on hand, because if I need emergency food, like if I'm out and about, like I have a glucometer. So I always keep, at least like $5 in there. Right, at the very least, and there's other cash reserves that, you can have swirled around wherever you may want. There's all sorts of ways you could do that, both at home and away, right, depending on what kind of gear you have. There's all sorts of cool gadgets and things you can find that'll facilitate, like money belts and that sort of thing, just on a more extreme version of that if you're traveling. I know some people, when they travel, have to utilize money belts depending on when you're going, but even those are often, they'll take your belt because they know. But having that little bit of cash on hand, if you don't got a credit card, right, how are you, and even having enough to make change per se too. That's another key thing that I consider when I'm out and about. I always have to have that on me, some sort of electronic ability in case I don't accept cash, because that's the other problem nowadays. Some places don't accept cash at all, right? So you need to have a card, but then you also need to have the inverse, the option if they don't have the ability to take electronic transfer, you have to have some sort of way to do that.
Yeah, I agree with that. The next on the list here is defensive tools beyond firearms. So carry pepper spray, knives, or batons for self-defense when firearms are impractical. Thor sent me a tomahawk once. That was nice. Actually, I already had that tomahawk, so I have 2 of them now.
Yeah, there's this, this is a, survival axe. This is meant for like building, tents and shit like that. We're using that cordage and whatnot, and it's got a hammer on one end and an axe on the other, right? So that's a tool. If I'm carrying this around though, as like that's not a like if I'm carrying this around, they're gonna have questions. Somebody, some law enforcement is gonna be like, "Sir, why are you carrying around an axe?" So it can't really do that. But in terms of like practical everyday use, right? You've got things like multi-tools, right? Simple multi-tool, and it's got flashlight in it, a little LED, on a little button cell battery, and it's got a knife, it's got a little scissors, it's got little flathead Phillips head screwdriver, and a bottle opener and shit like that. Just those super basic stuff, and this is like $30. The multi-tool you can carry around, and of course the pliers. So, and this is something that's not going to be as questionable you carrying it around every day as well, even though it's got a blade on it, because if you get stopped and you got a blade on you, cops are going to usually at least question you about it, even if they're not really trying to like hound you. So that's something you always got to be aware of, because you carry this on your belt, not concealed. Fun fact: any blade over like a half an inch, if it's concealed carrying a deadly weapon. Fun fact. Anybody that tells you otherwise is capping. That's the law, right? That's a concealed weapon. You got to open carry pocket knives and shit like that. Otherwise, you can get ticketed and even arrested, depending on the state you're in.
If the cop wants to be a dick, I suppose.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
But I mean, it depends on the circumstance, because if you're in the wrong place, the wrong time, and you're walking around like that, once again, they're not necessarily going to be in the wrong to question you being there. Just saying.
Or you're the wrong color, No, I'm just kidding. Oh, Paul, you can't say that. That's inappropriate. The next one I have here is vehicle preparedness. So ensure your vehicle has a full tank of gas, jumper cables, a tire repair kit, and emergency supplies like flares and a spare tire. I'd also throw in there, make sure you have a toolkit in there. So yeah, you can fix, things that you could fix. Hygiene and sanitation supplies. So store hand sanitizer, baby wipes, biodegradable soap, and portable toilets or waste bags. That might be handy. Especially if you have to bug out, right?
Yeah.
Important documents. Keep photocopies or digital backups of IDs, medical records, insurance policies, and emergency contacts. Have you guys thought about that?
Yep. As well as all the physical documents being kept, in fireproof containers and storage and stuff like that. In case of a fire, they'll be less likely that shit will be damaged. But yeah, a lot of that stuff is also backed up.
One thing that I learned in the Navy, when we were issued our DD-214, right? When you get out of the military, you get a document called the DD-214, which says that you got out with, honorable discharge and all that kind of stuff. You only give you one, and it's the original. And so one of the things that they tell you to do when you get out is go down to your county clerk and recorder's office and get a legal copy made with the county. That way, if anything ever happens to that document, you can always go and get a legal copy of that document. And so the funny thing is, the whole time I lived in San Diego, I never did that. And then when I finally moved here to Colorado, I went down to go get Navy plates, because in Colorado you can get Navy plates for your car. And so I had to bring my DD-214 down there, and the license plate place is like right around the corner from the county clerk and recorder's office. So I was like, you know what? I should probably do this since I'm here. I finally got that thing recorded. Thank God. It's smart to do that for any kind of document. If you can, like, take it to the clerk and recorder's office, you can get a legal copy of that.
Yeah.
Prepare for pets. Include food, water, carriers, and any necessary medications for your pets. You know, if you love your pets anyway.
Yeah, or say you got a cat and your cat is particularly squirrely and won't calm down during shit like that. My cat never had that issue, but my sister's cat did, and we had a house fire, and the cat was so crazy we had to leave the cat behind. Right, the fire ended up being all good. I ended up controlling the fire, fun times. But the cat would not cooperate and literally tore me up. I literally was fighting this cat for like almost a full minute, trying to get it in the carrier, and it did not want to go.
Yeah,
he was mad as fuck.
Neither of my cats like going in the carrier, and when I have to take them for their annual shots, it's always like I always leather up, put like, and I'm like, all right, let's fucking go.
Yeah, my cat was fine when it was time to go. I called him, he came running, I scooped him up and took him.
Yeah, yeah, my cats are terrible. Love them though. Let's see here. We've got skill building. So we talked about this a little bit, right? Learning survival skills like first aid, basic carpentry, fire starting, water purification, how to start a fire with sticks. But yeah, like skills don't weigh anything, so the more you can learn how to do some of this stuff, the less you have to carry around and put in a kit.
Yeah, understanding why the things that you get are important and how they're used correctly will give you a lot of context in how you could improvise those sort of things too. Like say you don't have a fresh supply, you need to figure out a way to get fresh drinking water. Well, you don't have a straw, a filter straw, so you got to figure out how to boil water, right? And if you don't know those practical skills, you've never practiced it, you've never done it, you don't really know what you're doing, and you're going to be at a detriment in those emergency situations. So understanding it's kind of like, understanding what the purpose of the law is and not just what the law is, right? It goes a long way in understanding how to use the tools that you have, because you can have all the survival tools, but if you don't know how to use them, let alone use them correctly, what good are they going to do? It's just a waste of money then.
Yeah.
Thor,
it's interesting. Go ahead.
I was saying that Thor and I have been survivalists for as long as I can remember. In high school, we would go out and try our survival skills. We would actually go hiking in the mountains, go camping for 3 or 4 days, and the only food we would bring would be maybe a can of tuna, and then maybe 3 or 4 cans of dog food. And the reason we would bring dog food is that, of course, the tuna would be very easy to eat the first night, but we would be trying our best at our survival skills to eat anything but that dog food, the canned dog food. So we did pretty good. We came out of it hungry, and we never had to eat the dog food, but you definitely start realizing that there are some skills involved. I think one time we actually ate lizard stew, that we had caught a few lizards and we'd made stew out of it to survive. But there's some skills that need to be done. I would also say that importance of actually having hard copies of information that you've seen that you'd like to keep in mind and valuable for yourself in a hard copy rather than in electronic form, because in a real shit hits the fan moment, and there's no power and you can't get into your internet to learn these things, it's nice to have a hard copy with some of those skills.
Yeah, I mentioned it already, but let's see if I can find it here. I'll drop it in the chat if I can find it. But the Green Beret Survival Handbook is a really good book to keep on hand. It's real small. Here it is. It's Hawk's Special Forces Survival Handbook. That's what it. Oh, he must have changed his name to it. But I'll drop a copy to this. This one actually has a pretty durable cover on it too. And so if you have that in your like rucksack or something like that, that has lots of great stuff in there.
That sounds like a good one.
And it's easy to read too, because I've read like the SAS Survival Handbook, and the guy who wrote the SAS Survival Handbook also wrote one for urban survival, which is pretty good too. But it's really dry, it's really like hard to read. But Hawk has a like sort of a sense of humor. You know, he's a country boy at heart, and he's just funny. So the way he talks, it's actually kind of really relatable. So that's why I liked his book the best. Let's see here. We've got community network. So establish connections with neighbors or local groups for mutual aid and resource sharing during crisis. You know, the local Republicans here, right after COVID, they got together and they started teaching everyone how to use CB radios, and we all put money in and got like handheld CB radios. And so all the way up and down the corridor here, we have a community of people with like these handheld radios in case there's an emergency and like communications get shut down and stuff like that. So that kind of thing is kind of handy, you know, having people that you can, you know, have an alliance with, you know.
Oh, that's so important. In fact, I lost track of the actual topic which is the communication you were referring to.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that's important to have is a network of people.
Yeah.
Because in a real shit hits the fan moment, you're going to need a network of people. It's going to be very hard to be by yourself, to defend by yourself. Whereas if you have a network of people, a group of people that you are prepared with, it makes it a lot easier. One of the people that I have in my group actually is a ham operator, and he has little ham radios, and he's got even extras in case that situation happens, that in the group we will have communication through his ham setup.
Yeah, ham radios are underrated because you can like bounce ham radios off the moon and talk to people on the other side of the planet.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, no, like
Mm-hmm.
some of that equipment is, you know, gets pretty exorbitant if you want to be a ham radio operator, but they're handy during a crisis. You know, if you have power and you can operate one.
Well, other than breaking the law, even getting them, the little handheld ones that'll easily do 50, 100 miles aren't that expensive.
Right.
You know, yeah. Operating them without a, in that situation, I don't know how many people are going to, government's going to be triangulating you to give you a ticket for using ham without a license, but you know.
Yeah. I think if it's a true emergency, I don't think the FCC gives a shit.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think.
I'll tell you what though, that sense of community, that really is important. I'm thinking back to where I used to live like 5 years ago, and I had it was like a smaller town, really tight knit, and just getting to know people. Like I had a woman that lived below me. There were many times where we helped each other out in something. It was a really bad weather season one year, and we actually had some tornadoes that came through, which is very rare for Pennsylvania, at least in the section that I'm in. And she would always notify me about different things that were going on. We had a fire station / police station a couple buildings down, and we had shelter there. They were very welcoming to us whenever something crazy was going on. Just having that support and not needing to need it most of the time, it still is very helpful to have that. Like she would text me sometimes prior to getting the alert on my phone of some weather event occurring, just because she was so well connected as well with everybody in the area.
Yeah, that would be really handy. The last one we have here is stay informed. Monitor local alerts and updates from credible sources. Subscribe to emergency alert systems via text or email. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, that's solid advice, as well as, you know, being involved in other networks, you know, because I was in MLD, John's Body Language Mastery Network when everything was going down. I already kind of was seeing what was going on because I was already spotting some of the misinformation, because I was so, you know, I've been talking to doctors for years about germ-like stuff and viruses, because I was a Resident Evil fanboy. I love the games. And I wanted to learn about how the shit actually worked rather than being in fantasy. I wanted to learn what the reality was. So I talked to actual doctors. So when this stuff's all coming out, that's why I had an N95 mask for going out versus a cloth mask, because that would actually be useful if we were dealing with that sort of situation. those sort of things. And because I was in the network, I knew what was actually going on around the world. I was able to get on the internet, and I was able to hear, anecdotally, of course, but I was able to hear from different individuals that didn't really have a reason to misrepresent what was going on. So I was getting reliable information from around the globe in real time about what was going on in like Italy, what was going on in Japan, what was going on in China, what was going on in Canada, what was going on in California, New York, you name it. I knew somebody that was in it, and they were talking about it if anything strange or weird was going on. And they were also calling out the misinformation, like, hey, this is what the scientists are actually saying, what they were saying before, what they've been saying for the last 100 years. This is what they're saying now. And this is not, you're saying trust the science, but I am trusting the science, and the science is saying exactly the opposite of what they're saying, right? And this is not a conspiracy theory. This is an actual scientific fact. It's like, but nobody was really following through with actually looking at that information. I digress on that point, but the way that I was able to maintain my sanity, and the reason why my woman loves me, is because I was giving her that real information too, by being connected with a good network.
Yeah. Smart. Well, cool. Well, I think that pretty much covers all of this stuff. Let's go ahead and go around the horn and final thoughts about this, and where can people find you online? We'll start with you, Huds.
Sure. Yeah. So final thoughts. Don't go crazy. You don't need to be one of those lunatic doomsday preppers who has like an entire warehouse, an underground bunker, but be realistic and understand that anything can happen. One thing when we were talking about like things that we have in the car, my car battery kind of sucks, and it typically goes out every year as soon as the weather gets cold. So I've got jumper cables, and I'll be honest with you guys. If I had to go do it right now, I Google it every time exactly how to do it because I'm scared of shocking myself. But the fact that I understand what needs to happen and I have that available, I'm never dead again, because that first time that you're like with a dead battery, it is just absolutely so dumb. So definitely take the time to think about just those main essentials. We went through a lot of those main essentials. Some things can be more expensive than others. I saw somebody had mentioned that they got a generator for themselves, and it was like $700. Sometimes you can get things a little bit cheaper. Understand that everything's an investment, but understand the purpose behind it, because that one time you get caught with your pants down, it's not fun. Now, for the future, I have an exciting announcement. My Men of Now community. I've talked about it. We had a group meeting actually with Beer Club as well as the Dragons this week, which was absolutely fantastic. Such a great discussion on money management. And I did share with everybody that we were going to be reopening my group. So Men of Now is going to be reopening. We have a waiting list right now. So I'll go ahead and put in the chat here the website if you guys are interested in something like this. We are going to be launching essentially through the end of the year, or not the end of the year, the end of the month. So when you sign up to this, you will get you'll get an email, and we're going to have a short discussion. It's going to be like a 10-minute chat with the guys, just to essentially vet you and see what you want to do. This men's community, it's all about leveling up in all areas of life. It again brings you into a large network of people like these great gentlemen here, where everybody knows something. So if you have a question, somebody can answer it. And I'm just really, really excited for where we're going to go. So definitely go ahead and sign up if you're interested. And yeah, we'll see you soon.
Awesome. Wraith, final thoughts, and where can people find you online?
Well, where you can find me online is Wraith_Detour on Telegram, Facebook, Instagram, and on Yahoo Mail if you go to that email address. Final thoughts: start developing a plan and develop different contingencies of the plan. If you're going to stay in place, figure that out. How much food and stuff you're going to need, how much of everything you're going to need, And then, if you have to bug out, have a place, an idea of where you're going to go and, what you're going to need to get there. And if you have a large family and you guys are going to all bug out and meet at a location together, make sure there's some form of communication or a plan of when they're supposed to show up, and when they don't show up, what's the next step. So, but other than that, like I said, you can catch me in those areas that I told you where I was at, and that's it.
All right. Vidar, final thoughts, and where can people find you?
Okay. Well, I know I showed up a little late on the thing, so I don't know how much we talked about and how deep we were talking about emergency survival. But one of the things when you were talking about having emergency funds, if we're talking a sustained time of an emergency or stuff hits the fan type situation, having things for barter is important. Again, if you have chickens, eggs, one of the great things for self-sufficiency in meat, if you've got the ability to do so, is rabbits. Rabbits are a great meat source, more protein than chicken, plus their pelts can be used for many different things. And one of the things that we talk about is precious metals. And people talk about investing in precious metals. And I'd like to say one thing about investing in like gold and silver, because as soon as I say invest in precious metals, people say talk about gold and silver. And it's very good to have gold and silver, should be part of your portfolio, in my opinion. But realize that gold and silver is not an investment. It's keeping your value. It's a hedge against inflation. But everything an ounce of gold would buy at the turn of the late 1800s will buy today. And you can look at the old Sears catalogs from then. You have a brand new stove, top of the line at the time would be about $14. An ounce of gold was $20 that time. You go buy a top of the line stove now, it's about $1,800, which is about the same, equal to what, going rate of it's the same value. So you don't really make money with it. You will keep its value. But one thing else I'd like to say with that is, not knowing that, I was talking to my father one time, and I was talking about investing in gold and silver, for not investing, but having that as a hedge for barter. And he asked me, he said, if in that situation, eventually gold and silver would be used for barter, but in a real emergency situation, you need real precious metals that are highly barterable right away, highly tradable. And I said, precious metals? He says, yeah, gold and silver, that's trinket metal. You make jewelry out of it. He said, the real precious metals, brass and lead. And I thought, brass and lead, how is that? And then I realized he was talking about ammunition. And absolutely, if you can have the ability to store not only the ammunition you need in a survival situation, ammunition will be a highly tradable. Let's say you're hungry, your neighbor has chickens and eggs. You can come over and say, how much for your eggs? Well, I'll give you 5 dozen for 5 223 rounds. Bam, easy. Lots of people will want to trade that. So just a thought that I would put out there along with this, being paired for survival. And as far as reaching me, I'm not quite open with everything yet on my social media presence, but you can find me on Telegram, and my username is @the_Viking_hammer. The Viking and hammer are capitalized. So that's @the_Viking_hammer on Telegram. You can reach me there. And don't forget, everyone, if you haven't yet, get Thor's book.
Yeah. You can also find Vidar in Thor's Dragons membership community. That's also on Telegram.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Charles.
So yeah, final thoughts. As I said, Boy Scout motto: always be prepared, but be realistic. Like a lot of guys, you know, like we discussed before, some of these more extreme people, they're creating something that's it's like a weird nesting human behavior, right? It's not weird. It's just something that it's not realistic. You need to be, if you're going to be prepared, you need to prepare realistically. Be honest with yourself of what actually the logistics you're going to be dealing with, rather than some manufactured ones. A lot of people are preparing for unrealistic scenarios or unlikely scenarios and neglecting actually the scenarios that are happening. You know, it's like if you spend, you know, $1 million building a bunker, but you don't pay your electric bill, right, you're going to have some problems, you know, just as an extreme example. So where you can find me, VikingParadigm.com, to find all my social links and whatnot, and get updates on whatever I got in the works, because I got a lot of irons in the fire right now. Thank you.
All right. My final thoughts are basically my beginning thoughts of this, which is, you know, disaster can strike at any time. Being prepared isn't being paranoid, it's being smart, you know, and I would recommend being a little bit prepared for any type of contingency, you know, that might happen. And just think about it. Like, look at LA right now. It's on fire right now. That's probably the simplest, you know, example of emergency situation is a fire that happens everywhere. You know, hurricanes don't always happen everywhere, tornadoes don't happen everywhere, but fires literally happen everywhere. So just you know, be prepared for that sort of thing. Tune into the podcast on Monday, the Come On Man podcast. I found a really great post from the Red Pill archive from a guy who applied red pill praxeology in his marriage to turn things around, and then after 8 years he came back to give an update, and along with that, a whole bunch of excellent tips to keep that marriage fire burning. So tune into that on Monday. It actually is a pretty great article. And then in the meantime, between now and then, my new book, Get Her to Fuck You Again, is available on Audible. So I'll drop a link to that in the chat. Listen to that. You don't have to be in a dead bedroom situation to listen to that book and get value out of it to keep that attraction going in a long-term relationship or your marriage. So please read that or listen to it on Audible. Other than that, we will see you guys next Saturday on the DragonShip.
Raven wings as our guide, skies of fire and ash, hearts beating the clash, but it's time to rise.